Saratoga is a city in Wood County, Wisconsin, located in Silicon Valley in southeastern Bay Area. Saratoga is an affluent residential community known for its wineries, restaurants, and attractions like Villa Montalvo, Mountain Winery, and Haycone Gardens. It not only offers inviting neighborhoods and friendly communities, but also a booming industry and incredible growth opportunities. Saratoga is home to several unique neighborhoods, each with its own character and charm. Brookview and Pride's Crossing in the north, Blue Hills and Greenbrier in the southwest, and Congress Springs in the southwestern corner of Saratoga. But amidst the beauty and charm of such vibrant communities, a sinister crime was committed in 1984. A 73-year-old woman was found brutally murdered in her own home, leaving investigators with little to no substantial evidence. Eleanore Roberts of Nakusa, Wood County, Wisconsin, was born on April 10, 1911. She was a beloved mother, wife, and grandmother. She had a son named Marshall Roberts who lived close to her in Saratoga. Known for her kind-hearted nature and always going out of her way to make sure everyone around her feels loved and cared for, she was a beloved member of the Saratoga community that she was residing in 1984. Sadly, when she was least expecting it, tragedy was waiting for her just around the corner. The events that unfolded in the Roberts household on that fateful day on November 27, 1984, was nothing short of chilling. It was after Eleanore failed to show up to meet her brother at an automobile dealership where she was looking to buy a car that her brother went to her home on South Hollywood Road in Saratoga. But when Eleanore didn't answer the door, he called her son Marshall Roberts. As Marshall made his way to his mother's Saratoga home, little did he know that he was about to be confronted with a scene of horror that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Marshall knew there was a key to his mother's house kept at a hidden place outdoors. As soon as he unlocked the door and entered the home, he immediately noticed that something was amiss. The air was heavy, the house was eerily quiet. But it wasn't until he made his way to the bathroom that he realized the magnitude of what had happened. As he opened the bathroom door, Marshall was hit with a sight that he could never have prepared for. His mother, Eleanore Roberts, lay motionless on the floor in a pool of her own blood. Her head was covered with a bath mat, which Marshall immediately pulled back, only to be confronted with the unthinkable. His mother's lifeless body, with signs of violent trauma. In that moment, Marshall knew that he was looking at a crime scene, one that would forever change the course of his life. Marshall immediately dialed 911 and reported that he had found his mother dead in her own home and gave the address to the police. Within minutes, officers were dispatched to the location. After he dialed 911, in a short while the place was packed with Wood County Sheriff's Department detectives and forensic team personnel. The forensic pathologist who did the autopsy determined that she died from a combination of blunt force trauma and numerous stab wounds, which based on the shape and other factors he believed came from being stabbed with scissors. There were no natural causes related to her death, and the death was ruled a homicide, as the sheriff's office report stated. Someone had stabbed and beaten Eleanore to death. She suffered broken ribs and a punctured heart and lungs, the wounds being consistent with being stabbed with a pair of scissors. The only items authorities found missing upon further investigation of the home were a pair of scissors, a knife, and a telephone, according to the warrant. As the investigation into the tragic loss of an innocent life unfolded, the killers seemed to have left no trace behind, leaving the authorities with nothing to go on. But just when all hope seemed lost, a glimmer of light appeared in the form of a palm print that was found in the bathroom where Eleanor's body was found. Investigators found the knife that same day on Hillcrest Avenue in Saratoga, not far from Robert's South Hollywood Road home. They found the scissors the next day, about 1.25 miles away, and the telephone 4 months later in March 1985 in the Wisconsin River, about 2.5 miles away. On the day of Eleanor's death, an officer found a ski mask on the branch of a tree across from Eleanor's home, according to the criminal complaint. It appeared to have been thrown there. The mask, along with the knife, the scissors, and the phone were found in places along the same route. The investigators theorized that the potential suspect lived along this route as well. Upon further investigation, the route on which the evidence was found led the investigators to John A. Sarver, an employee who worked at a store where Eleanore had purchased a lawnmower from. On December 3, 1984, Sarver was first interviewed. He told investigators the day before Eleanor's death he was with another witness shooting pool at Evergreen Lanes. Investigators learned that Eleanore came into contact with Sarver when she bought a lawnmower from Competition Cycle where he worked during the summer of 1984. The lawnmower required repairs covered by warranty, and Sarver had performed the repairs when Eleanore made the complaint. On May 1, 1985, Sarver was interviewed again, and he confirmed his last contact with Eleanore would have been in the summer of 1984 when he went to repair the lawnmower she had bought from his employer. When the palm print that was found in the bathroom was identified and confirmed as Sarver's, he was interviewed again. And again, he told the investigators that his last contact with her was late summer, early fall 1984, which was consistent with other records investigators had. But Sarver said he never was inside her home. So, how did his handprint get there? The other witness Sarver claimed to have been with at the time of the murders was also interviewed. And while the witness could not specifically remember everything that night, he said he didn't remember ever shooting pool with Sarver. Investigators said he gave several different alibis in that interview, and upon further interrogation of the witnesses Sarver had claimed to be with, none of them could be confirmed. In fact, another witness he said that he was with told investigators they were by themselves that evening. During various interviews, Sarver gave different explanations of where he was when Eleanore was killed. Investigators were never able to confirm any of his explanations or alibis. Another witness around the time of Eleanor's death told investigators Sarver was having financial difficulties and that he had borrowed $2,000 from him shortly after the murder. The witness said he was never paid back. In 2005, a confidential informant at the time told investigators that 17 years earlier, Sarver admitted to killing a woman with a karate chop to her neck, which matched Eleanor's injuries according to the complaint. 4 small claims cases were filed against Sarver since 2006 for non-payment of bills, and one similar case was filed 3 months after he was arrested. Eventually, though it seemed like all the evidence pointed to Sarver, the case went cold. Retired Wood County Sheriff's Office Lieutenant Robert Lewandowski, who was one of the first investigators on the case, said the case often stalled through the years. Former Sheriff's investigator Jay Schroeder spent hours organizing years' worth of information. There often were disagreements between investigators and prosecutors about whether the case was ready to be reopened. Lewandowski said for decades it sat cold and a solution seemed impossibly far. Nearly 3 decades after the crime, in May 2013, investigators said they got a search warrant to obtain DNA from John A. Sarver, whom authorities had regarded as a prime suspect in the case since Eleanor's tragic demise. Jerome C. Lippert, a retired business executive who lives in the Pittsville area and studies local history and events, wrote an article that was published in the Wisconsin Rapids Tribune on December 16, 2016, which made a shocking claim. Not all police officers involved in the case deserved praise. What unfolded was a story within the story. During the late 1980s, John Sarver served as a citizen informant for the Wood County Drug Enforcement Unit under the supervision of Detective Brian Illingworth, also known as Big Al in the field. Illingworth, who was later retired as a detective and former Wood County Sheriff, testified during the trial. Despite attempting to present a favorable view of his work with Sarver, evidence presented during the trial suggested that the former sheriff had become too close to his informant. For instance, Sarver was not fingerprinted upon starting his work, a standard procedure that was only carried out 2 years later by another officer. Additionally, Illingworth attended Sarver's wedding, an uncommon practice, and there was a question during the trial about Sarver becoming heavily intoxicated while under Illingworth's supervision, which is clearly against departmental policy. In 1988, during the investigation into Eleanore Roberts' murder, an intriguing meeting took place at a cabin in Adams County. where Sarver and Illingworth were purportedly alone before other law enforcement officers arrived to question Sarver. The details of that conversation held during this private interaction, if any, have never been disclosed. Furthermore, Lippert was aware of another crucial piece of information that never came to light during the trial. In the 1990s, a member of the Roberts family approached then-Sheriff Illingworth with a Reader's Digest article that discussed advances in DNA testing, wondering if it could help with the case. Shockingly, the sheriff glanced at the family member and callously retorted, "The suspect is a friend of mine," before tossing the magazine back at them. This is an utterly unacceptable response for any law enforcement officer to give to a grieving family member seeking justice for their loved one. It can now be openly stated that not all police officers involved in this case deserve praise. This attitude or conflict could have contributed to the delay in justice for this case. Furthermore, there was a peculiar incident that occurred towards the end of Sheriff Illingworth's career in Wood County, which may have some correlation. It is possible that some long-term residents in the area remember that in 1997, Illingworth was admitted to Rock County Institution, allegedly due to depression and struggles with alcohol and drug abuse. This information was initially kept from the public, but eventually came to light, and as a result, Illingworth decided not to seek re-election in 1998. He retired from law enforcement without much fanfare the following year. In that article, Lippert also noted that there had been a chief suspect. At the time, he was not at liberty to name the individual for obvious reasons, but that person was Mr. Sarver. Lippert also indicated that the whole story was not being told. Indeed, the trial proved that his assertion was also correct. He asked for renewed interest in this case, which led the investigators to work on this case determined to find the killer of Eleanore Roberts. The Wood County Sheriff's Officer Heiser added, "The first thing we did was look at all the evidence. Looked at the 6,000 pages of reports that were done over the years. And then we met with all the investigators who had worked the case." The accused, Sarver, was 21 when Eleanore died, worked at a business that sold her a lawnmower, and had gone to service it at her home, according to the warrant. At first, he told authorities he was never inside Roberts' home, but investigators later found his palm print on the bathroom counter. In April 2020, the same witness told investigators that Sarver admitted to going into Eleanor's home to rob her. He said he was surprised she was home and beat her to death, by accident, according to the complaint. After nearly 36 years, developments were made in the gruesome Central Wisconsin murder case. One of the key witnesses who wanted to remain anonymous finally came forward in 2020, after almost 4 decades of suppressing his memories, primarily due to fear. He was the one who confirmed at trial that there were in fact 3 people at the crime scene in 1984. During his testimony, Mr. Sarver was referred to as a scary dude due to his connections with the police, which made him afraid to speak out and even fear for his safety. In 2020, he overcame his fear of John Sarver and decided to come forward with his painful memories, realizing that it was better to confront them before he died. His testimony was truly gripping. The courtroom was so silent that one could have heard a pin drop. As per the complaint, the witness told the investigators that he had heard that Sarver had confessed to breaking into Eleanor's house through the rear entrance with the intention of robbing her and accidentally killing her. The criminal complaint states that the department persisted in submitting samples for DNA testing from 1988 until 2020, utilizing increasingly sophisticated testing techniques as they became available. Unfortunately, due to the global pandemic, the case experienced a setback after charges were pressed in 2020. The Wood County Sheriff's Office and Wisconsin Department of Justice, DOJ, announced that on August 27, 2020, the prime suspect of this case, John A. Sarver, from Port Edwards, Wisconsin, had been arrested in connection to the first-degree murder in the death of 73-year-old Eleanore Roberts. If convicted, Sarver, who had been in jail pending a $1 million cash bond, faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. Sarver had a hearing and requested Wood County Circuit Judge Nicholas Brazeau Jr. delay the trial, scheduled to start March 14, 2022. Roberts' son and Assistant Wisconsin Attorney General Annie J., a special prosecutor in the case, both asked Brazeau to keep the trial scheduled for March 14th through 18th, according to online court records. Sarver's attorney, Jeremy Meyer O'Day, said he and attorney Taylor Hart needed more time to interview witnesses and finish their investigation. Brazeau ordered the trial be reset and scheduled for a hearing for updates on March 15, 2022. And in November 2022, John Sarver was found guilty at trial of killing Eleanore Roberts. Because Sarver committed the crime after November 3, 1983, but before August 31, 1995, the judge has no say over his parole eligibility. Sarver will have to serve 13 years and 4 months before he can go before a parole board. An inmate must satisfy 5 requirements before the parole commissioner may recommend a grant to the parole chair. The 5 requirements are good conduct, competition of programming, sufficient reduction in risk to the public upon release, sufficient time served so as not to depreciate the seriousness of the offense, and a completed and approved release plan as determined by request of an investigation by the commission. He has had the opportunity to live a full life, to raise a family that maybe he shouldn't have had the opportunity to do. It's a good thing that he did it because there are good people in this world, but there isn't nothing in my mind or heart that makes me think that he should have opportunities to get out there, said Judge Brazeau. Time between the murder and his arrest in 2020 was his parole, according to the reports. The arrest came as the result of a joint investigation between the Sheriff's Department and the State Department of Justice, which will prosecute the case, Wood County Sheriff Sean Becker said. It was a brutal homicide that has gone unsolved for way too long, Becker said during a news conference outside the Wood County Courthouse. There were times that people were frustrated, but we never gave up. The prosecutors from the State of Wisconsin Department of Justice, DOJ, did an excellent job of methodically building their case. The lead defense attorney did his job in fine fashion as well, working to cast doubt whenever he could. Ultimately, however, he was not successful, because from my perspective, the facts were just too much to overcome, Wood County Sheriff Sean Becker said. November 2, 2022, in Branch 2 Wood County Court, a guilty verdict was finally rendered in the case. John A. Sarver was convicted of this heinous crime, and the case finally came to its conclusion. On January 23, 2023, justice was finally served in the case when John A. Sarver was sentenced for the first-degree murder of 73-year-old Eleanore Roberts. The resolution is a significant achievement and testament to law enforcement officials' dedication and persistence, providing closure to the victim's family and the community, and reminding us that justice can be served regardless of time passed.